Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing HFY stories. Hit the bell icon to get notified about our latest uploads. The vast expanse of space was a battleground. Across the galaxy, civilizations rose and fell in a cosmic struggle for supremacy. At the center of it all was the war-hardened warrior race of the Zaldrak, known throughout the galaxy for their unrivaled strength, fearsome combat skills, and near-immortal resilience. Yet even they had their limits. On the planet Vernax 7, within the towering citadel of their warlord, Zaldak the Unbreakable, the greatest challenge was about to unfold. For centuries, the Zaldrak had dominated countless species, defeating armies of every kind. But now their greatest rival had emerged: humanity. Zaldak had heard the stories, whispered in dark corners of the galaxy. Humans, a young species, had begun to make waves, defeating enemy forces far stronger than themselves through sheer will, strategy, and an unyielding thirst for victory. Despite their lack of advanced weaponry or innate strength, humans had taken down monstrous creatures, defied impossible odds, and come out on top time and again. The tales were enough to pique the interest of the warlord. As part of an ancient rite, the Zaldrak leaders had long sought to prove their strength through a brutal challenge, the test of blood. Only those worthy enough could claim the ultimate prize, the ability to harvest the strength of another species, to drink their blood and absorb their essence. This power had been passed down through generations, and every leader before Zaldak had faced it with unwavering resolve. But Zaldak's challenge was different. The stories of humanity had caught his attention, and he believed there was one human, one that would prove more powerful than any Zaldrak warrior could imagine. He had set his sights on one human, an unassuming soldier, Marcus Harper, who had risen to fame in the human military. A soldier who had survived battles that had wiped out entire armies. Zaldak was eager to test the myth for himself. He had arranged a clandestine meeting with the leaders of a neutral world, who were hesitant about a confrontation but had little choice but to acquiesce to the Zaldrak. In the darkened heart of a secret arena, beneath the blood-red sky of Vernax 7, Marcus Harper was transported into enemy territory, unaware of the true nature of the battle awaiting him. The arena was an ancient structure, designed for the ultimate confrontation. The ground was a massive pit, surrounded by a ring of alien spectators, whose eyes glowed with the excitement of bloodshed. The air crackled with tension as Zaldak descended from his throne, his towering, armored form casting a long shadow over the arena. His eyes locked onto Marcus, who was momentarily blinded by the intense light from the overhead spotlights. The Zaldrak warrior's presence was enough to strike fear into the hearts of even the bravest men, but Marcus held his ground, refusing to show weakness. Zaldak spoke, his voice booming and filled with ancient authority. "Human, you stand in the presence of a race that has conquered galaxies. Yet you have dared to challenge us, to defy the very laws of strength. Tell me, what is it that drives your kind to rise against the might of the Zaldrak?" Marcus, standing in the middle of the arena, met his gaze without flinching. "Survival. A will to live. A need to protect what's ours." Zaldak's lips curled into a smile, the first sign of curiosity he had shown. He knew that humans were more than just warriors. They were something else. But he was about to see just how deep that strength ran. The test of blood had only one rule: victory meant the absorption of your opponent's power. If Marcus survived this, he would prove something that no Zaldrak had ever considered: that the true strength of humanity wasn't in their muscles or weapons but in their spirit. The battle began. Zaldak charged with terrifying speed, his massive blade flashing through the air. His strength was enough to split the ground beneath Marcus's feet, but the human soldier was quick. He dove to the side, rolling to avoid the blow, narrowly escaping the lethal strike. His heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing with calculations. Every move needed to be perfect. This wasn't a battle he could win through brute force. No, this was a test of wits and will. The Zaldrak warlord was relentless, launching one attack after another, his overwhelming strength sending shockwaves through the arena. But Marcus was different. He wasn't just dodging for survival, he was learning. Each swing of Zaldak's blade revealed a pattern, a weakness in his attack that the human soldier began to exploit. As the minutes wore on, Marcus's confidence grew. He began to strike back, landing blows that made the Zaldrak warrior pause, if only for a moment. These were no ordinary humans, and Marcus Harper was no ordinary soldier. Zaldak, still unrelenting, snarled with frustration. He had underestimated the tenacity of humanity, the refusal to bend or break. "Impressive," Zaldak muttered under his breath, a newfound respect glimmering in his eyes. "But I will break you. You will kneel before me." But Marcus was not about to kneel. Each wound he took only fueled his resolve. He could feel the Zaldrak's power in every strike, but with every drop of blood spilled, he felt something else. The strength of his ancestors, the strength of his comrades, the will of humanity itself coursing through his veins. He was not just a man. He was the embodiment of humanity's defiance, its relentless drive. As the fight raged on, it became clear that the true test was not just about physical strength. It was about heart, about the unbreakable human spirit that refused to surrender, even when faced with the impossible. And as Marcus Harper stared down Zaldak, both warriors knew that the outcome of this fight would shape the future of the galaxy. The battle in the arena had drawn on longer than anyone had expected. The Zaldrak warriors, usually accustomed to swift and brutal victories, were silent as they watched the confrontation unfold. Zaldak had never encountered an opponent like Marcus Harper. The human was not just surviving. He was adapting, learning, and pushing back in ways that were unfamiliar to Zaldak's experience. There was no hesitation, no fear, just raw determination, an unstoppable force of will. The warlord's anger flared as he swung his enormous blade down toward Marcus, but the human was ready. Marcus ducked under the strike, his boots scraping the stone floor as he rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the deadly arc. His heart raced, each second feeling like a lifetime as the pressure of the fight weighed on him. Sweat dripped from his forehead, and every muscle screamed in protest, but his eyes never left Zaldak. Zaldak bared his teeth in frustration, growling as he prepared for another strike. "You are strong, human. Stronger than I imagined. But strength alone will not save you. You are nothing compared to the power of the Zaldrak." With that, the warlord slammed his fist into the ground, sending a shockwave that cracked the stone beneath their feet. The force was enough to send Marcus sprawling, his body skidding across the arena floor. His vision blurred, and for a moment, everything went black. His breath came in ragged gasps and his pulse pounded in his ears. The impact had been brutal, but Marcus wasn't finished. Shaking off the pain, he forced himself back to his feet, eyes blazing with defiance. "I don't need to be as strong as you," Marcus said through gritted teeth, his voice low but filled with conviction. "I only need to be stronger than you think I am." Zaldak laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that echoed through the arena. "Your words mean nothing in the face of true power. I will drink your blood, and in doing so, I will know the strength of your kind, and it will not be enough." The words stung like a slap in the face, but Marcus refused to let them shake him. He wasn't just fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting for every human who had ever faced impossible odds, for every person who had ever been underestimated. This battle was more than just a test of strength. It was a statement that humanity would not be broken. Not by Zaldak. Not by anyone. With a primal roar, Zaldak charged, his massive form a blur of motion as he lunged at Marcus with lethal speed. The human soldier met him head-on, his movements a blur of calculated precision. As Zaldak's blade descended, Marcus twisted, evading the strike with inches to spare, and slammed his fist into the side of the warlord's armor. The blow wasn't enough to break through the thick plating, but it made the Zaldrak warrior stumble, just enough for Marcus to land a series of quick, devastating punches to the joints of Zaldak's suit. The warlord howled in pain, his fury intensifying as he retaliated with a violent sweep of his blade. Marcus dodged again, this time using the momentum to spring forward, slamming his knee into Zaldak's chest with a sickening thud. The force of the impact knocked the air from Zaldak's lungs, and for a brief moment, Marcus saw something he hadn't expected: vulnerability. Zaldak staggered back, panting, his glowing eyes narrowing. You are more than just a human," he growled, his voice filled with disbelief. "You are a warrior." Marcus wiped the blood from his lip, the wound already beginning to heal. He could feel his body struggling to keep up with the damage Zaldak was dishing out, but the human resolve in him pushed forward. "That's the difference between you and me. I don't give up." The warlord's eyes flickered with a hint of hesitation before his anger flared once more. He reached into his armor and withdrew a strange, glowing crystal, an ancient artifact that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. This was the key to the test of blood, the relic that would allow Zaldak to absorb the power of his defeated foes. With a roar, Zaldak slammed the crystal into the center of his chest. The energy surged through his body, crackling like lightning as his muscles bulged and his armor began to hum with power. He was transforming, becoming more than just a warrior. He was becoming a force of nature, a being fueled by the power of countless species he had conquered. Marcus felt the weight of the change in the air. The energy crackled, the ground beneath his feet shaking as Zaldak's aura expanded. It was like a living storm, threatening to consume everything in its path. The human soldier gritted his teeth, preparing himself for the final phase of the fight. "You are a fool if you think you can stand against me now, human." Zaldak's voice was a terrifying growl, deepened by the energy coursing through him. "I will crush you and your species will fall beneath my might." Marcus didn't flinch. He had faced impossible odds before and he would face them again. His mind raced, searching for a way to defeat a being that was now more than just a physical opponent. He needed to find a weakness, something in Zaldak's new form that could be exploited. Zaldak's next strike was lightning fast, a blur of energy and force that Marcus barely managed to dodge. The shockwave from the blow sent him crashing to the ground, his body aching from the impact. His vision swam and for a moment he wondered if this was the end. But then he remembered why he was here. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for humanity. And humanity never gave up. With a grunt of effort, Marcus pushed himself to his feet, his resolve steeling as he focused on Zaldak's glowing crystal. The relic was the source of the warlord's power, it was the key to his transformation. If he could destroy it he might have a chance. Zaldak swung again but this time Marcus was ready. He ducked and rolled, closing the distance between them with a burst of speed. Zaldak's eyes widened in surprise as Marcus leaped, his fist aimed directly at the glowing crystal embedded in the warlord's chest. The impact was deafening. For a brief moment, everything stood still. Then the crystal shattered. The energy in the arena faltered, and Zaldak let out a guttural roar as the power that had surged through him began to unravel. His body trembled as the transformation reversed, and the once imposing warrior fell to his knees, his strength draining away. Marcus stood, panting, his chest heaving as he looked down at the warlord. The fight was over. Zaldak had been defeated, not by superior strength, but by the unyielding determination that lay at the heart of humanity. The arena was silent. The Zaldrak warriors, who had once viewed the human soldier with disdain, now watched with a mixture of awe and fear. Marcus had done what no one had believed possible. He had proven that humanity's strength wasn't in their muscles, but in their unbreakable spirit. As Zaldak crumbled before him, Marcus raised his head high. "This is what you've underestimated," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. "Humanity." The arena was still, the air thick with the scent of sweat, blood, and tension. Marcus Harper stood victorious, his chest heaving, eyes scanning the vast expanse of the citadel. The once raging energy of the battle had dissipated, leaving behind a heavy silence that felt almost suffocating. Around him, the Zaldrak warriors stood motionless, staring at him with wide eyes, as though they had just witnessed the impossible. Zaldak, the mighty warlord who had ruled for centuries, now lay defeated at Marcus's feet, his once imposing frame now nothing more than a crumpled heap of armor and flesh. His breathing was shallow, his glowing eyes dimmed as the energy from the crystal faded. The power that had coursed through him was gone, and with it, the aura of invincibility that had once defined the Zaldrak. Marcus's heart still raced in his chest, but the adrenaline of the fight was starting to wear off, replaced by a deep, bone-shaking exhaustion. His body was battered, bruised, and bleeding, but the pain was secondary. His mind was focused on one thing: survival. The fight was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. As the Zaldrak warriors continued to stand in stunned silence, one of them, a towering, broad-shouldered warrior with a jagged scar running down his face, stepped forward. His eyes glowed with the same eerie light that had once burned in Zaldak's, but there was something else there now: fear. Fear of the human who had just brought down their greatest leader. The warrior's voice was low, filled with a mixture of anger and respect. "You've won, human. But what now? You've defeated Zaldak, but you are still alone. Our kind will never kneel to you." Marcus didn't flinch. He had expected this. Even though he had brought down their warlord, he knew the Zaldrak were not a species that easily accepted defeat. They were a proud, ancient race, and their pride would demand retribution. "I don't want you to kneel," Marcus said, his voice steady and commanding. "I want you to understand that you can't just take what you want by force. There's more to strength than sheer power. You've spent centuries conquering worlds, but you've never known true strength. Not like humanity does." The scarred Zaldrak warrior sneered, clearly unconvinced. "You think we don't know strength? You've barely scratched the surface of what we are capable of." Marcus took a step toward the warrior, his movements slow but deliberate. "Then prove it. Show me what you've got." The challenge hung in the air like a tangible force, and for a moment, the arena seemed to hold its breath. But then, the scarred Zaldrak warrior looked down at Zaldak's fallen form and seemed to hesitate. He glanced back at the other Zaldrak, his eyes scanning their faces. For the first time since Marcus had stepped into the arena, he saw doubt in their eyes. "You are not our enemy," the warrior said quietly, though there was still a hint of bitterness in his voice. Zaldak was. "You have proven yourself human. But this is not how things are done." Marcus nodded, his expression serious. "You can't keep fighting wars that never end. Zaldak's way has only brought you endless conflict. You may be strong, but if you're not fighting for something worth protecting, then it's all just a cycle of destruction." For a long moment, the Zaldrak warrior said nothing. Then, with a grunt, he stepped back, signaling the others to do the same. The tension in the arena started to loosen, and one by one the other Zaldrak warriors lowered their weapons. They had seen something in Marcus, something that had shaken the foundations of their belief system. Humanity, the species they had once considered inferior, had shown them a strength they had never understood. Marcus exhaled a breath he didn't realize he was holding, but his relief was short-lived. The challenge had been won, but at a price. He had earned their respect, but at the cost of something deeper. His own humanity. As he stood amidst the Zaldrak, he realized the full weight of what he had done. Victory had come with a heavy toll. He had just dismantled a long-standing empire. A warlord had fallen, and with that fall, an entire civilization would be forced to confront its own weakness. The Zaldrak would not simply accept their loss and move on. They would seek answers, seek retribution, and perhaps most dangerously, seek to understand humanity's strength. There was no going back now. As the dust settled, a voice from the back of the arena interrupted Marcus's thoughts. It was the leader of the neutral world, a tall, regal alien with silver skin and eyes that shimmered like the stars. She had been watching from the shadows, but now she stepped into the light, her gaze fixed on Marcus. "You've done what no one thought possible," she said, her voice smooth and almost melodic. "But now you've opened a door that may be impossible to close." Marcus turned to face her, his wariness evident. "What do you mean?" The alien leader's gaze was inscrutable. "The Zaldrak are not just warriors. They are the backbone of an empire that spans galaxies. With Zaldak's death, you've thrown their entire hierarchy into chaos. The power vacuum you've created will not go unnoticed. Other factions will seek to claim the throne, and those who once followed Zaldak will either rally under a new banner or turn on each other." She paused for a moment, her expression hardening. "You've earned their respect, yes. But respect is fleeting. The Zaldrak are a force of nature, and they will not forget that you have killed their king. Even if they accept you as their equal, others will come for you. You may have won today, Marcus Harper, but the price you will pay may be much greater than you realize." Marcus's stomach twisted with the weight of her words. He had fought for his survival, for humanity's survival, but now he understood the magnitude of what he had set in motion. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, and the Zaldrak, for all their pride, were not the only power to fear. He glanced back at the fallen warlord, his mind turning over the alien leader's words. The Zaldrak would not let this stand. They would rebuild, and when they did, they would come for him, for humanity, with a vengeance. But Marcus had learned something in the arena, something he had known deep down all along. Humanity didn't bend to fate. They didn't back down from challenges. They overcame them no matter the cost. With a final glance at the alien leader, Marcus turned away. "Then we'll be ready." The battle for the galaxy had only just begun. The weeks following Marcus Harper's victory over Zaldak passed in a blur of negotiations, alliances, and quiet threats. The Zaldrak, despite their pride and defiance, had begun to change. Their once monolithic empire was fractured, its leaders now divided over how to respond to the loss of their warlord. It was clear to Marcus that the defeat of Zaldak had broken something within the Zaldrak, something deep and fundamental. Yet, as the dust settled, it became even more apparent that their pride and hunger for dominance would not easily be extinguished. The warlords who had once bowed to Zaldak now looked to the horizon, calculating their next moves. Some wished to avenge their fallen leader and reclaim their former glory, while others sought new alliances that included humanity of all things. Marcus had been called to several councils, each one more tense than the last, where emissaries from the Zaldrak, alien traders, and political factions met to discuss the aftermath of Zaldak's death. The neutrality of Marcus's homeworld, Earth, had kept them largely isolated from the rest of the galaxy's affairs. But now humanity had become a key player in a much larger game. And Marcus had become its reluctant pawn. On a cold, moonlit night aboard a neutral space station orbiting a barren planet in the Zorith system, Marcus stood before an uneasy council. It was a gathering of the most powerful factions in the galaxy, drawn together by the shifting tides of power. The council chamber was stark, cold, and illuminated by the eerie glow of the distant stars. Representatives from the Zaldrak, as well as from several smaller alien races, sat in a semicircle around a massive holographic table. Marcus felt the weight of their gazes on him as he stood, arms crossed, at the far end of the room. The air was thick with unspoken tension. He knew that many of these representatives viewed him with distrust, some with open hostility. Others, however, saw him as a symbol of something else, an opportunity. An opportunity for what? Marcus wasn't sure. But the feeling of being caught in the middle of something far beyond his control gnawed at him. The fight against Zaldak had been his victory, yes, but the consequences were not his to choose. The galaxy was now looking to him, seeking answers to questions he hadn't been asked, let alone prepared for. "You have won your battle, human," the voice of Threxus, the alien leader from the Velcrix race, broke the silence. His voice was like gravel being ground underfoot, rasping and harsh. "But your victory has caused a ripple. The Zaldrak will not sit idly by while their empire crumbles. They will rebuild, and when they do, they will be more dangerous than before." Marcus didn't flinch. "I've faced worse than a wounded empire." Threxus leaned forward, his alien features sharp and predatory. "You misunderstand, human. It's not about your battle. It's about your species. The Zaldrak have always been one of the greatest powers in this galaxy, and now you've taken away their leader. There will be those who will see you as a threat, and others who will try to use you for their own ends." The Velcrix leader's words echoed in Marcus's mind, and he began to see the gravity of the situation unfolding. Zaldak's death had already reverberated across the galaxy, shaking the foundations of many empires. The Zaldrak would come for retribution, not just against him but against humanity itself. And the factions that had once respected their power would either rally to take Zaldak's place or abandon the Zaldrak altogether, seeking to claim the power vacuum for themselves. Marcus's mind raced. The galaxy wasn't ready for humanity's involvement. And humanity wasn't ready for the galaxy. But the truth was clear, there was no turning back. He had thrust Earth into a war it had never asked for. "We are not afraid of the Zaldrak or anyone else," Marcus said, his voice unwavering, "but we'll need allies. If we're going to survive this, humanity must have a place at the table. We won't sit in the shadows anymore." Threxus studied him for a moment, his glowing eyes narrowing. "And what of the others? Do you expect us to accept your species as equals? The Zaldrak, the Star, the Selvax, we all have our own ways. Your kind is barely out of the cradle, and yet you think you can just waltz in and take part in matters far beyond your comprehension." Before Marcus could respond, another voice, soft but firm, echoed through the room. It came from an alien seated on the opposite side of the council table. The being's appearance was almost ethereal, translucent skin, golden eyes that glimmered with ancient wisdom, and an air of calm authority that contrasted sharply with the aggression of the Zaldrak. This was Arandis, the emissary of the Zelnor, an ancient species that had been watching the rise of humanity with interest. "Let us not forget," Arandis said, her voice a melodic contrast to Threxus's grating tone, "that it was the Zaldrak who caused this chaos. Not the humans. They did not ask to be thrown into our conflict. The Zaldrak Empire, under Zaldak, threatened to dominate and destroy all those who did not bend the knee. Humanity's actions, while unorthodox, have brought an end to that era. Perhaps it is time we allowed them to stand with us as equals. They may be young, but their spirit is unlike any I have seen in centuries." Marcus looked at Arandis, her golden eyes meeting his with an unexpected sense of understanding. The Zelnor were not known for showing such favor to lesser species, but there was something in her gaze that spoke of an ancient wisdom, one that had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. She had seen humanity's potential and understood what was at stake. "Humanity has faced its own battles," Arandis continued. "Perhaps we could learn from them just as they may learn from us." Threxus scowled but remained silent, clearly displeased with Arandis's words. The room was divided and the tension had shifted, now crackling with the possibility of a new order. But the debate was far from over. "We can argue about humanity's place here all day," Marcus interjected, his voice cutting through the discord. "But it won't change the fact that the Zaldrak will come after us. They'll come after all of us. And if we don't unite, we'll fall to pieces, one by one." The council fell silent once more. For the first time since Marcus had entered, he felt the full weight of his words sink in. The galaxy's most powerful factions were beginning to understand. They had no choice but to change. The future of the galaxy had shifted on its axis, and humanity was at the heart of it. The silence stretched, but it was no longer uncomfortable. It was the silence before the storm. Arandis nodded slowly, her gaze never leaving Marcus. Then let us begin, Marcus Harper. We will stand together, or fall apart. Your victory, though costly, may yet be the catalyst for something far greater. Marcus took a deep breath, his heart heavy with the knowledge that the road ahead would not be easy. But the fire inside him burned brighter than ever. The war was far from over, but humanity had found its place among the stars. The question now was, would the galaxy accept them? The quiet hum of the ship's engines was the only sound in the dimly lit command center as Marcus Harper stared out the viewport. The galaxy beyond was an endless expanse of stars, distant worlds, and infinite possibilities. Yet all he could see was the storm on the horizon, the coming war that threatened to engulf everything. Humanity had gained a foothold among the stars, but at a steep price. The factions, the Zaldrak, and the enemies they had made were a constant reminder that their survival was never guaranteed. The council meeting had barely concluded, but the uneasy alliance formed among the galactic powers was already starting to show cracks. The Zaldrak had agreed to a temporary ceasefire, but Marcus knew better than to believe in their long-term cooperation. Beneath their veneer of diplomacy lay a deep well of resentment, one that would not stay buried forever. The Star, an insectoid species with a cold, calculating demeanor, had already begun skirting the edges of the agreement, maneuvering to expand their influence at the expense of the Zaldrak. The Zelnor, while sympathetic to humanity, were just as ancient and enigmatic as ever, with motivations that remained unclear to all but themselves. But the most pressing concern, the one that kept Marcus awake at night, was the gathering storm on Earth. While humanity had earned a place at the table of galactic power, that same strength had made them a target. The factions that had once looked down upon humanity were now casting covetous eyes on Earth's resources, technology, and the very thing that had made them formidable, their unyielding will to survive. "Sir, we've just received another transmission from Earth," said Lieutenant Kate Juno, her voice cutting through the silence. She stood beside Marcus, her face pale with concern. "It's from the High Council. They're calling for an immediate vote. There's growing unrest down there. The Zaldrak are pushing harder for trade routes to Earth's colonies." Marcus turned to face her, his brow furrowing. "What's the issue?" "We agreed to open limited trade, nothing more." "I know, sir," Kate replied, "but some factions on Earth are pushing for more. They're being swayed by the promises of the Zaldrak and others, the trade deals, military alliances. There's a faction within the government that wants to take a more aggressive stance, to assert Earth's position in the galaxy, and they're gaining momentum. They're starting to question whether the Council's diplomacy is enough to protect Earth." "Great," Marcus muttered, rubbing his temples. "Earth's already divided, and now we have to deal with intergalactic factions trying to pull us in every direction." Kate handed him a small, glowing tablet. It displayed an encrypted transmission from Earth's High Council, a message that had been broadcast to all senior officers. Marcus leaned over, scanning the text, his eyes narrowing as he read the urgent request for action. "They're looking for more than just trade agreements," he said, his voice grim. "The message is clear. They want a defense pact, a commitment from all the galactic powers to protect Earth from the Zaldrak's retribution." Kate's expression hardened. "The Zaldrak won't take kindly to that. They've made it clear they see Earth's role in Zaldak's fall as a threat to their empire. And you're not the only one with a target on their back now, sir. If Earth pushes for a defense pact, there's a real chance the rest of the galaxy will turn on us." Marcus clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of the decision hanging over him. Earth had only recently gained prominence on the galactic stage, and already it was becoming a pawn in a much larger game. The Council had been a temporary solution, a fragile alliance designed to keep the peace for a while longer. But peace was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. The Zaldrak were plotting their revenge. The Star were opportunistic, the Selvaks calculating, and the Zel, well, their motives remained as opaque as ever. "What's the next step?" Marcus asked, his voice cold with resolve. Kate paused for a moment, then spoke with a sense of urgency. "We need to get to Earth before the High Council votes. There's no telling how the decision will swing. If the wrong faction gains control, they might push Earth into a war we're not prepared for. We have to intervene, speak to them directly, and make sure they understand the consequences of aligning too closely with any one faction." Marcus nodded, already formulating a plan. "Get our fleet ready for immediate departure. I'll handle the Council." As he turned to leave the command center, a wave of unease swept over him. Earth's future, the future of humanity, hung in the balance. This wasn't just about winning a war against the Zaldrak. This was about ensuring that humanity's place in the galaxy wasn't shaped by the whims of other species. But as much as he wanted to protect Earth's independence, he knew he couldn't do it alone. Earth's leaders needed to understand that the stakes were higher than ever. Meanwhile, on Earth, in the corridors of the United Earth High Council, the air was thick with the tension of impending decisions. Representatives from all corners of Earth's political landscape gathered in a massive, circular chamber, where holographic displays showed the latest reports from Marcus and his team. While the council had been forced into a delicate balance between factions in the galaxy, a more radical group was growing impatient with the diplomatic efforts. General Olivia Kane, a decorated war hero, stood at the center of the room, her posture rigid, her expression one of unwavering determination. She had spent years training humanity for a war she hoped would never come, but the time had come for a different kind of fight. One not just against the Zaldrak, but against the forces within Earth that sought to make humanity a weapon. I believe it's time for us to stop pretending that we're just another small player in the galaxy. General Kane's voice rang out, cutting through the murmurs. The Zaldrak see us as weak. They see our diplomacy as weakness. And the galactic powers are no better. If we're going to survive, we need to show them that Earth will not be their puppet. We need to secure our borders, ensure our sovereignty, and force these powers into a permanent alliance with humanity. Her words were met with divided murmurs from the council. Some nodded in agreement, while others exchanged uncertain glances. Kane's faction, the hardliners, believed in using humanity's newfound strength to assert dominance, to force the galaxy into submission. They were tired of being pawns, tired of being at the mercy of factions that cared nothing for human life. We must act decisively, Kane continued. We are no longer a vulnerable species. We have the technology, we have the will, and we have the military might to stand against anyone who threatens us. Let the Zaldrak come. Let the Star plot their schemes. We will not bow to anyone. Her words were powerful, resonating with the majority of the room. But there was one voice that interrupted, cutting through the rising tension. I disagree, came the voice of President Eleanor Hunt, the leader of the more cautious faction, her tone steady and authoritative. If we act recklessly, we risk everything. The galactic powers are watching us closely. We cannot afford to alienate our allies. The chamber fell silent as the two leaders locked eyes, their ideological divide clear. The vote was imminent, and whichever way it swung, it would shape the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. Back in the command center, Marcus sat in the war room watching the events unfold on Earth. The transmission from the High Council had just finished, and now it was up to him to sway the tide before Earth made its fateful decision. His hands gripped the table, his mind racing. Humanity was on the brink. And the galaxy, with all its factions and power struggles, was no longer a distant threat. It was right at their doorstep. The real question now was whether Earth would be strong enough to face it alone, or whether the galaxy would force them into submission. The time for diplomacy was running out. The decision had been made. Marcus Harper stood on the bridge of the Vigilance, staring out at the expanse of stars before him, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. A war that had begun as a personal vendetta against the Zaldrak had now spiraled into something much larger, a war for humanity's survival. The fragile alliance that had briefly held the galaxy together was now crumbling, and Earth, his home, was caught in the middle. A message had just come in from Earth's High Council, confirming what Marcus had feared. The hardline faction led by General Olivia Kane had won the vote, and humanity was now preparing to align itself more aggressively with the galactic powers, particularly the Zaldrak. They were willing to offer military support in exchange for trade agreements and promises of protection. It was a dangerous gamble, one that could either solidify humanity's place in the galaxy or destroy it. Marcus turned away from the viewport, the coldness of space a reminder of just how far they had come, and how far they had yet to go. His mind was a whirlpool of thoughts, each competing for dominance. The Council's decision, Earth's volatile political landscape, the looming Zaldrak retaliation. He couldn't afford to be a spectator any longer. Humanity was no longer a mere participant in galactic affairs. They were a target. We're approaching the station, sir. Lieutenant Kate Juno's voice broke through his thoughts, sharp and clear. Preparations for the meeting are complete. The Council wants you there. Marcus nodded, pushing aside his doubts. The Council's decision was final, but there was still time to influence how things played out. Time to get ahead of what was coming. The Vigilance dropped out of hyperspace, and the familiar outline of the neutral space station Orbital Nexus 5 came into view. It was a place where all the factions had gathered for tense discussions in the past, a crossroads of sorts where peace and war collided. The station's sleek metallic form reflected the distant stars, its halls hosting diplomats, warlords and everything in between. "We'll have to tread carefully," Marcus muttered under his breath as the ship docked. "If we make the wrong move, Earth will be caught in the middle of a war we can't win." On the station, the council chamber was filled with representatives from all sides, the atmosphere tense as the factions gathered once more. The Zaldrak were represented by a new face, a young, ambitious warlord named Sikarath, who had quickly risen through the ranks following Zaldak's death. His presence was an ominous one, his cold eyes scanning the room with a predator's gaze. He was a tactical genius, ruthless, and ready to lead the Zaldrak in their push for domination. Seated across from him, General Olivia Kane's steely eyes met his, her resolve unshaken despite the ever-growing pressure. She had fought for this moment, for humanity's place at the table. But as much as she believed in her cause, Marcus knew that her desire for strength and influence might cloud her judgment. She wasn't thinking about the bigger picture, the consequences of human involvement in a galaxy so wrought with conflict. The Zelnor had sent their emissary, Arandis, once again, though her silence spoke volumes. There was wisdom in her gaze but also a wariness. She had always been the voice of reason, advocating for peace and balance in the galaxy. Yet even she knew that things had changed. Humanity had triggered something deep within the galaxy's most ancient powers. The star, as usual, sat in the shadows, their insectoid form barely noticeable, yet their eyes glimmering with an unspoken calculation. They were watching, waiting for the right moment to make their move. "Welcome," Marcus said, standing at the head of the table. He had to project strength, confidence but also calm. "We're here because we face a choice that could change the future of the galaxy." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Humanity's decision to align with the Zaldrak may seem like a necessary step, but I warn you, we cannot afford to rush into this blindly. The Zaldrak's ambitions are far from being satisfied. They will use us as long as it suits them, and then they will turn on us when they no longer need us." Sikarath's gaze hardened. "Your warnings are noted, human, but you misunderstand. The Zaldrak do not forget those who aid them in battle. We will ensure your place in the galaxy is secured." "That's the problem, Sikarath," Marcus replied, his tone cold and unwavering. "The Zaldrak do not ensure anything. They take. And when they've taken everything they need, they discard their allies like so much debris. You may be the future of your people, but your hunger for power will be your downfall." A low hum of murmurs rose around the table. Sikarath clenched his fists but he said nothing. The tension was palpable. Arandis, ever the voice of reason, spoke up. "Marcus is right. The Zaldrak have their own interests, but so too do the rest of us. Humanity's strength is undeniable. Your species has proven that in battle. But your alliances, they come with a price. Have you considered what happens if the Zaldrak turn on you?" "We've made our decision," General Kane said firmly. "Humanity will not back down. We will stand with the Zaldrak and we will ensure Earth's survival. The galaxy will respect us or it will learn to fear us." Marcus shook his head, frustration bubbling under the surface. "Fear is not respect, General. You're playing a dangerous game and it's not just your life at stake." Before he could continue, the doors to the chamber opened with a sudden whoosh. A new figure stepped forward, a representative from the Selvax, the most enigmatic of the galactic species, known for their political cunning and merciless negotiation tactics. This was a rare appearance. The Selvax had never before engaged so directly in galactic affairs. The Selvax emissary was tall, cloaked in dark robes that shimmered with an almost unnatural energy. Their face was hidden beneath a hood, but the voice that emanated from them was both resonant and foreboding. "The galaxy is shifting," the Selvax representative intoned, their voice smooth and calculated. "You think your alliances will protect you but they will only delay the inevitable. The Zaldrak will turn on you, just as they have turned on every other ally they've ever made. You must prepare yourselves. The time for choosing sides is over. The time for survival begins now." The room went silent, each representative aware of the weight of the Selvax's words. Marcus met their unseen eyes, the realization settling heavily in his chest. The galaxy was not a place for the faint of heart. It never had been. Humanity's path had been set, but the cost of their survival was steep, and the consequences were far-reaching. In this galaxy, there were no guarantees, no alliances that couldn't be broken. The galaxy itself was a battleground, and Earth had become a prize to be fought over. "You're right," Marcus said finally, turning his gaze to General Kane. "We are at a tipping point, but we must remember that survival isn't just about power. It's about the choices we make. And right now, the most important choice is whether we'll be the masters of our own fate, or whether we'll be slaves to the ambitions of others. The council chamber was still, the weight of his words hanging in the air. The galaxy was shifting beneath their feet, and humanity's future had never been more uncertain. But one thing was clear: the war for humanity's place in the stars had only just begun. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.